Without much ado, let me request Mr. Somsekhar Rao to read the prayer, and then we'll kick off the meeting. Somsekhar Rao.
Heaven of freedom, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where the knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where the words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by the into ever widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. Thank you.
Thank you, Somsekhar Rao. Some of you, before you guys joined, we were just informally talking. And one thing significant about this meeting is that the moment we sent out the invite poster and the invite email, many of you got back and asked, is the speaker so-and-so's son? And I should admit my own ignorance. I wasn't aware of Mr. Sanjeev Dev Suryadevara, our distinguished speaker's father. And then over the last couple of weeks, I learned a bit about him. And in fact, we have on the call Mr. Chidambar Rao, who stayed with Mahendra's father when Mahendra was 10 months old. So that's something. He says 65 years ago. And then, of course, Murali was the first one to point out, are they from this village near Guntur, Suryadevara? That's how I came to know. So that was something of a unique experience for all the talks we arranged in the last 14 years. And I'd like to welcome those of you who are attending for the first time. And for your information, our meetings are always held on the third Saturday. I keep saying this in every meeting, yet some of you forget. It's always on the third Saturday evening at 6:15 p.m. on Zoom now, since the pandemic. Earlier, we used to meet, Somsekhar Rao was just telling before that we should try and meet physically once, maybe in the winter time, I don't know, occasionally at least. But since the pandemic, we've been meeting on Zoom unfailingly every single month. And each month's meeting is an endowment lecture in someone's name. Right now, we have 2 months which are available, January and I believe August. So if any of you are interested in setting up an endowment in the name of your father, mother, anybody you'd like to cherish, whose memory you'd like to cherish, do let me know. Me or Mr. Somsekhar or our secretary, Mr. Bose, who is unable to join us today. We'll be happy to discuss the details. So this month's meeting is an endowment set up in the name of Dr. Mullapudi Harishchandra Prasad, the doyen of Indian industry, especially in Andhra, an agrarian-based industry. And we'll hear more about him shortly. And this is the 11th endowment lecture being delivered in his memory. And we are very happy that a son of the soil, so to say, Professor Mahendra Dev is delivering this lecture. And he's got another connection. One of the earlier Dr. Harishchandra Prasad endowment lecture was delivered by Dr. Y.V. Reddy, the former governor of RBI, with whom Mahendra works very closely even now in the Forum for State Studies. But we will hear more of all this. So with that background, may I call on Murali. Mr. Murali Mohan Jagarlamudi is a senior from school. First of all, he's an Eagle from Hyderabad Public School. He is the managing director of JUL, an Andhra Sugar subsidiary company near Guntur. And Dr. Mullapudi Harishchandra Prasad was the chairman of that company too for a very long time, at least all along. for as long as I knew, till he passed away. So Murali will tell us a brief, read his brief profile to remember his life and work. Murali, would you like to unmute yourself?
Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, let me thank FOSWL Hyderabad, Mr. Venkateswar Rao, Mr. Subbarao, and the rest of the FOSWL team for giving us the honor of having one of these monthly meetings every year in honor of Dr. Mullapudi Harishchandra Prasad. And also congratulate FOSWL for holding this 175th consecutive meeting, if I'm not mistaken, without a break.
Correct.
That's coming to over 15 years non-stop. That's incredible. And having speakers of such eminence, one better than the other, so I must appreciate you all on that. And so to this evening, we are having another eminent speaker. We're very happy about that. Thank you, Professor, for being here with us. I'll just read a brief profile of Dr. Mullapudi Harishchandra Prasad, born on July the 28th, 1921, in Peddapatna, Agraharam in East Godavari district of Andhra Pradesh. Dr. Mullapudi Harishchandra Prasad was a man of many facets, a patriot, pioneer, and a politician, a naval administrator, and an industrialist with a philanthropic outlook. Be it in politics or in industry, his career was always steered by a strict adherence to ethics and values, a factor which no doubt contributed to his large success. After plunging into the freedom struggle in his student days, Dr. Prasad went on to forge a successful stint as a political leader, holding posts such as Secretary of the AP Congress Committee from 1946 to 1955, member of the Legislative Council of Composite Madras State in 1952, and as an MLA of Andhra Pradesh between 1955 and 1967, all at a very young age. Between 1959 and 64, he also held the post of president for the Taniku Gram Panchayat. As the first chairman of the Taniku municipality, he undertook many steps to develop his hometown. His contribution to his hometown did not stop there. In 1947, 4 days before the country's independence, at the age of just 26, he started a sugar factory, the Andhra Sugars Limited, at Taniku, a rural and predominantly agricultural area with an aim to improve the economy of the region and uplift the rural population. He went on to become the longest serving chairman and managing director of a public limited company of the country, a distinction he held for over 5 decades. Today, his modest sugar factory has grown into a major industrial conglomerate in West Godavari district, manufacturing not just sugar, but a host of inorganic compounds as well. A visionary leader, Dr. Prasad also set up a wind farm in Anantapur district. And he promoted the Andhra Petrochemicals Limited at Vizag in collaboration with UK-based Davy McKee for the manufacture of also alcohols. Driven by the passion of self-reliance espoused by Dr. Harishchandra Prasad, the company developed propellant fuel for the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, giving a private sector boost to India's space program. Till date, it is the only company which provides that fuel to ISRO, and it's only five in the world who do the same product. In fact, it was ISRO that came to and asked Dr. Harishchandra Prasad for their company to develop the product, giving the know-how Along with the late Sri Velagapudi Ramakrishna, another pioneering veteran of the sugar industry, Dr. Prasad toured Europe extensively to procure the best sugar machinery and to get a deeper understanding of industrial activities and processes. His world travels also took him to Mexico, the United States, Singapore, and Japan, where he attended numerous conferences as a delegate. At times, was much acclaimed as a speaker and almost always viewed as a cultural ambassador of India. Dr. Harishchandra Prasad's philanthropic contribution to society deserves a special mention. He also set up two trusts, Sri Mullapudi Venkatrayudu Memorial Educational Trust for promoting the Sri Mullapudi Venkatrayudu Memorial Educational Trust for promoting the cause of education, and the Sri Mullapudi Venkatrayudu Memorial Medical Trust to set up a 450-bed hospital at Tanuku. Dr. Prasad was also the principal donor for the establishment of Rangaraya Medical College at Kakinada. With an eye on education, he also set up several primary and secondary schools in the rural areas of the district. For his extraordinary achievements and contribution to society, Dr. Prasad received several awards, such as Manager of the Year 1973, Corporate Excellence Award in 1995, Vriksha Mitra Award in 1997, an honorary doctorate from Nagarjuna, Acharya Nagarjuna University in 1999, a Lifetime Achievement Award from Hyderabad Management Association, Service Above Self Award from Rotary International in 2000, the Sri U.B. Raghavendra Rao Memorial Award for his contribution to the sugar industry. And these are just a very, very few. In fact, the whole list is there. It will take all evening. In fact, if you go to his office room, it is full of awards and prizes on the shelves and certificates framed, hanging on the walls. Yeah. And he also received the Telugu Talli Award from the government of Andhra Pradesh and Thana Award for Lifetime Achievement in Industry, Education, and Philanthropy. A multifaceted personality with both expertise and experience, Dr. Harishchandra Prasad held several key posts in both public and private sector institutions during his lifetime, notably as President of Federation of Andhra Pradesh Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Director of the Andhra Pradesh Industrial Development Corporation Limited, Andhra Pradesh Industrial Infrastructure Corporation Limited, and State Bank of Hyderabad in the private sector. He was chairman and managing director of the Andhra Sugars Limited and managing director of Andhra Petrochemicals Limited. Dr. Prasad also served as chairman of Hindustan Allied Chemicals Limited and director of Messrs. Elecon Engineering Company Limited, apart from being on the board of several other government and trade bodies, cultural and educational trusts, and social service organizations like Rotary International. Yeah. He was also a chairman, he took over two industries in Guntur. One is a cotton and oil products division, and other is a Jayalakshmi Oil and Chemical Industries Limited, which has been now renamed as JUL, of which I am the managing director. Mr. Subbarao was the director for a very long time. He served as the longest president of the Hyderabad Public School Society, which runs the prestigious Hyderabad Public School. This longest president, I was told only this afternoon by Mr. Subbarao, who was also a member, I think, of the Board of Governors. Dr. Mullapudi Harishchandra Prasad Institute of International Business was also established recently in his honor in the campus of Acharya Nagarjuna University. Dr. Harishchandra Prasad was known to be a stickler for punctuality and discipline. Always dressed in traditional attire, he was soft-spoken and mixed well with his employees. He passed away in the year 2011 at the ripe old age of 91. His legacy shall live on forever. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Murli. I know it's rather a task to compress Dr. Harichandra Prasad's life and work into a short,
Yes, I mean,
synopsis.
tough time.
There are a couple of connections that come to my mind, as I was hearing you. One is, of course, several of us are from the same school, for which ever since I was in school, I knew him to be our society president. And I was very fortunate to be the secretary and treasurer of the society when he was the president, till he laid down office and Mr. Surendra Reddy took over. And the other connection is there's one Dr. Ravi Ramaswamy on the call. He is now a doctor in Florida. He went to Rangaraya Medical College. Am I right, Ravi? You mentioned about he being the principal donor for that, setting up that college.
Yes. Yeah. The family was the principal donor.
The family was the principal.
Yeah.
Very nice. And it's very apt, I think, that we have Professor Mahendra Dev to speak to us today, because Dr. Harichandra Prasad, as I knew, also was very committed to developing industry and employment opportunities in the rural areas. And Professor Mahendra Dev's work, you'll be amazed to hear that he has over 150 research publications in national and international journals. And what are the areas these publications are? They relate to agricultural development, poverty and public policy, inequality, food security, nutrition, employment guarantee schemes, social security, farm and non-farm employment. So I hope you see the synergy between these two people. One who was often called the Andhra Birla, and Professor Mahendra Dev, who comes from this illustrious family of Sri Sanjeev Dev Suryadevara. And Professor Mahendra has written over 22 books, and some of them are very well known, very well cited also. Inclusive Growth in India, Agriculture, Poverty and Human Development, which was published by Oxford University Press. And his book on Perspectives on Equitable Development was released by the former Prime Minister of India. Going through his profile, I was quite amazed at the breadth of his skills or engagement. And right now, he is, at the beginning of the meeting, they were talking about it. He is a distinguished professor at ICFI. It's a deemed university, am I right, Professor Mahendra?
Yes.
Yeah, and he is on the Faculty of Social Sciences at Hyderabad. He has moved back. Formerly, he was the Director and Vice Chancellor of Indira Gandhi Institute of Development Research in Mumbai for 12 years, from 2010 to 22. And currently, he is also the chairman of the Institute for Development Studies in Andhra Pradesh. He is, as I mentioned earlier, along with Dr. Y.V. Reddy, he is associated with the Forum of Social State Studies, of which he is the chairman. And he is also closely connected by being a member of the Governing Council of the Association of Indian Universities. And relating to the topic of today, he is the president of the Indian Society of Agricultural Marketing. I'm sure you'll agree that he is probably the best qualified to talk to us on the subject today. And he is also a member of the Executive Committee of the International Economic Association. And not very unconnected, but slightly different from this, he is also an independent director of Axis Bank since 2021. I think prior to this, he was on the bank of Kotak Mahindra as an independent director. He has won, as you can well expect, many awards. And just to mention a few, the Malcolm Adisesha Award in 2016, the Distinguished Alumni Award by Delhi School of Economics, that's his alma mater, where he obtained his PhD, and then he went on to do his postdoctoral in Yale University. And then he got the Scotch Group Award for Development Economics that's more recent, March 2022. He has a host of other professional accomplishments and affiliations, but I think it'll be more interesting to give him more time and space to tell us about the topic of the day. But we have a remarkable person in the name of Professor Mahendra there to speak to us, and we are very fortunate to have you, Professor. And I invite you now to take over the floor and deliver the 11th Dr. Mullapudi Harichandra Prasad Endowment Lecture.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Subbarao, for your kind introduction and also for inviting me to deliver this lecture. FOSWL is a remarkable organization. I'm told you are meeting every month and for the last 15 years or so continuously. I'm also happy to know that FOSWL is an initiative of the Kisan Forum. And it's an honor and a privilege to deliver Dr. Mullapudi Harichandra Prasad Endowment Lecture. As Mr. Murali mentioned, he was one of the well-known industrialists, particularly setting up agro industries and created incomes and employment in the region, and also contributed to education and health, and many other social services. So on this occasion, I'll be speaking on agriculture reforms, in India, issues and policies. Mr. Subbarao mentioned, he requested me to speak on recent 3 farm laws. So I've prepared a PowerPoint presentation. It is self-explanatory. So I will try to complete it fast in 30 to 35 minutes, and then we can have some discussion. So I'll go to the share screen. Yeah, so the contents of the lecture, briefly, I'll talk about the progress of agriculture over time, and then the marketing reforms in agriculture since 2003 during Vajpayee government, and about 3 farm laws. So what are the benefits and what are the concerns of the farmers on these 3 farm laws? Of course, they have been repealed, but still it's important to know what are the benefits and what are the concerns. And some other agriculture reforms like subsidies, land, technology and institutions. And lastly, on what are the goals of agriculture and changing narrative needed for Indian agriculture. So if we take the first 50 years of the pre-independent period, the growth rate in agriculture was 0.3% per annum over the 50-year period before independence. But in the post-independence period, the growth rate has been around 3% per annum in the last 75 years or so. And also the country became self-sufficient, you all know, because of the Green Revolution, and the food grains, number was 50 million tons in 1960s. Now it is almost more than 6 times, 331 million tons in the last financial year. And we also know that India is the largest producer in several items like cotton, pulses, milk, and second largest producer in vegetables, fruits, and third largest producer in eggs. And also, rice, it has been exporting almost, I think last few years, 20 million tons and even 25 million tons like that. There have been structural change in Indian agriculture. Within agriculture, I'll talk later, but what's happening is diversification within crop sector and diversification from crops to livestock and fisheries, and also from agriculture to rural non-farm sector. In fact, the NABARD says that the rural incomes, the rural households they get only 23% from agriculture, cultivation plus livestock. They get from non-agriculture, the rest of the money. Even the NSS surveys, they called situation assessment survey, shows that wage income is higher than the farm income for agricultural households. So the numbers from NABARD, for example, 2015-16, they did a survey. So average farmer gets income about 8,900. So out of that, cultivation and livestock, about 43% for agriculture households, 35 plus 8. The rest they got from non-agriculture, even the agriculture households. And if you take total households in rural areas, they get only 18.5 plus 4 from cultivation livestock. That's about 23% they get. The rest they get from wage labor, the private service sector, government and private service sector, and other services. So even the farmers and agriculture household, they get income from non-agriculture because that's not enough from the agriculture. In fact, situation assessment survey, more recent, 2018-19 survey also, it's our comparison. It is in current prices. It increased from 2,000 for the average farmer to 6,000 and to 10,000. So average farmer gets in 2018-19 about 10,000 rupees. This is per month. So the share in total income, if you see cultivation and animals, about they get thing, but cultivation share has declined over time. Animal share has increased, and wages are almost around same time. So in fact, wages has become more dominant in recent one. So some are becoming agriculture laborers. Some of the farmers more getting more income in agriculture labor. So the income is, if you take into constant prices, only 3% increase over time for the over 20-year period or so. So you need more. For example, Prime Minister is talking about doubling farm income, but for that you don't need. You need more than 3%. You need 7-8%. Per annum over time. So within agriculture, there is a lot of changes. In fact, crop sector has only 58% within the sector, the share. Within that, cereals, in fact, cereals share and horticulture share are almost similar now. And livestock is much higher, 29% of GDP of agriculture, about 29% livestock. But of course, there are significant regional disparities in agriculture diversification. I won't go into the state-wise disparities. But the policies still favor rice and wheat. The government policies, in fact, 3 crops, rice, wheat, sugarcane, corner almost nearly 80% of the irrigated water in the country. In fact, rice and wheat cultivation Punjab is not sustainable because there is a groundwater depletion thing. So there is a need to promote other crops like horticulture, pulses, millets for more equal distribution of water. Otherwise, 3 crops are consuming almost 80% of the water. So when I was chairman of CSCP, Commission for Agriculture Crop, I was giving also higher prices for other crops, millets, pulses, oil seeds, to promote them. Although there is no procurement, but it gives a signal to the market. Another thing is agrarian structure. In fact, 1970-71 marginal is 51%, but now it is 68%. Marginal is almost having a 1 acre or something. Small farmer about 2 hectares, and the semi-medium and all. So their share has declined. For example, large has declined from 4% to here. And then marginal and small together, about 86% of Indian agriculture by the marginal and small farmers. And then their average size is very low. Marginal, for example, 0.3 in acre, small farmers 1.4 hectare. So size of the farm is very low for marginal and small. Also, they are subdivided into several plots. For example, somebody has 1 or 2 acres, but that is divided into, somebody has in east 1 plot, west in 1 plot, north 1 plot, like that. So this is one problem, the small size of the agriculture. Coming to the reforms, you all know economic reforms focused on industry, trade, foreign trade, investment, banking, and other things. In fact, 1991, they did not include any reforms for agriculture. The view used that, I was talking to Dr. Manmohan Singh and Dr. Ahluwalia at that time. They said, there is no need for agriculture reforms because reforms in industry will help agriculture. Because industrial products, if there is a license charge is removed, they'll be cheaper. So agriculture will benefit because they use fertilizers and other things. So Manmohan Singh and others said that the reforms in industry and others will benefit the agriculture. But if you see, in spite of all the MSP, minimum support price and subsidies, Indian farmer is net taxed compared to farmers in other countries. For example, a study by Gulati and others showed that Indian farmer is net taxed by 14% on average during the last 2000 to 2016. Why they're net taxed? Because there is no freedom. They can't, sometimes exports are banned, sometimes stock limits, storage limits. So if you compare those things, compared to other countries, Indian farmer is net taxed in spite of subsidies and MSP. So agriculture marketing reforms, actually, agriculture in markets are in the state list. So agriculture produce marketing committees, they started in early 1960s. So it was a mandate, for the farmers to sell it to the mandis in some of the commodities by paying commissions and market fee. And the traders, middlemen have to get licenses from APMC. APMC is the Agriculture Produce Marketing Committee. And many of the APMCs that time used funds, beneficially to the farmers by creating infrastructure, marketing, marketing infrastructure and all. So that was useful. But what happened over time, vested interest took over and the system deteriorated. So what's happening? The governments have their own nominees in the boards of mandis, the APMCs. So it was difficult to break the nexus between politician and traders, middlemen. And also competition is, they formed the cartels. So they're, dictating the price. We will give lower price to the farmer. So the domestic reforms in agriculture started only in the Vajpayee government, 2000s. There have been moves to liberalize agriculture markets since 2002. The government has been, gradually deregulating. In fact, budget 2002 started the Agriculture Produce Marketing Act. The Model Act, like the recent farm laws, they wanted to have the Model Act and ask the states to liberalize agriculture markets. So response of the state governments to the Model Act is not that good. Some states have accepted and some states have not done. Again, in 2013, UPA government tried, and 2017, the NDA government also tried. So that did not work that much. So the recent farm laws and market reforms, I'll spend more time on this. So during COVID time, Atmanirbhar Bharat was done with a package of 20 trillion, almost 10% of GDP. And also the government started during coronavirus, the long-awaited agriculture reforms. So earlier center shared the model, but now the center itself wanted to have these reforms. So because they want to also concentrate on interstate trade, that falls under central subject. Basically, domestic market reforms involve removing controls. So prevailing restrictions on domestic trade, and they were there because of pre-green revolution era. So we have to remove some of those things because we have achieved self-sufficiency in food grains and all. And also restrictions on movement, storage and all, they are counterproductive. So they have to be removed. So what happened, the restrictions also deny fair prices to producers because they can only sell in mandis, agriculture produce marketing committees. So there you don't get higher price there. So that's why the central government started these 3 laws. They call it the Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce, the Farmers Agreement of Price Assurance, Essential Commodities Act. So the first one is on basically having alternative markets. Second one is on more contract farming. Third one, of course, essential commodities, removal of that act. In fact, agriculture economists and the others, they have been advocating the agriculture market reforms since 1991. So what are the benefits of these farmers to these 3 farm laws? The first one is greater choice to cultivators to sell their produce to whomever they want, and freedom is also for buyers to improve private investment, agriculture infrastructure. And APMCs have commissions and taxes, whereas so that has become an exploitative kind of thing and do not help the farmers. So that's why the new farm law on trade limits APMC jurisdiction. It is called the market yard. The APMC thing is called market yard. And then they have another thing called trade area, where non-APMC, anybody, corporator or anybody can have buy from the farmer. So in the trade area, there is no need of license and other things. There is no fee. So there is no obligation to pay fee or cess under this act. Therefore, the buyers can transfer, for corporates or somebody to the farmers a higher price because they don't have to pay fee and all. And second law relates to contract farming, which has been legalized under this thing. So farmers can sign contracts with processors, but the agreement between the farmer and the, for example, Pepsi or somebody, farmers can withdraw from the contract at any stage without penalty. In the law they provided. They will be paid within 3 days of signing the contract. And dispute mechanism also included. That will be also, there is a fixed time frame. The third law is amending the Essential Commodities Act because there are a lot of limits on storage and other things. So amended law is supposed to attract corporate and foreign investment in many industries. So both farmers and buyers will gain supply chain improvements, better storage, and also it reduces the food wastage because better storage and other things. So that's why this third law on Essential Commodities Act, removing that. So is it the 1991 movement? There have been extreme reaction to the farm laws. Some say that agriculture market reforms are similar to 1991 movement, while some others say that is completely useless, these new laws. In my view, farm laws are important, but they're supposed to address the long-standing problems of the farmers. But the truth in terms of the impact on farmers may lie between these extreme views. First, there is a wrong impression that all the farmers have to sell only in APMCs. In fact, even earlier, only 25% they are selling in mandis. The rest they are doing outside. But outside they have to get licenses and other things from APMCs. So whereas new laws don't provide that. In fact, states like Kerala and Bihar do not have APMCs. Thus, it's a continuous process. So it's not a 1991 movement like industrial reforms and all. But why there is so much attention now? Because first time a central law is have been brought on this agriculture reforms. Earlier it's only a model law. It's only suggestion thing. But now they have brought the law. Another point is that current reforms are done by central government and more freedom is given to farmers and traders outside the mandi system. And what are the concerns of the farmers? You all know that more than 1 year they had done dharnas near the Delhi border, Punjab farmers and other farmers in other states. So one concern is that whether central laws are necessary in a diverse country like India. Each state has its unique features. So that is one. And also some people prefer is corporates capture some of the things. So two other main concerns are it weakens the existing MSP, minimum support price system, and also dismantling the regulatory protection, basically corporatization, and small and marginal farmers have disadvantages. So this is the concern of the farmers. That's why there was big agitation. Now, whatever MSP is given, the farmers want MSP should be legalized for all crops within mandis and outside mandis. But government is saying we are giving assurance on MSP, but they don't want legal because it will create problems if it is legalized. And corporates dominate that I already mentioned, that unregulated markets in the non-mandi area can they can also form cartels. So the fear is that APMC mandis will be weakened and may not then small and marginal farmers will be in problem. And also the mandis sometimes fix the price. For example, rice 2,500 rupees per quintal or something mandi fixes. So now you don't have that reference price for the market. Suppose mandis are weakened. Bihar has abolished APMC, but experience is not that good. And other issues, concerns are still middlemen agents still continue even under the new laws. So one view is that we should have market infrastructure for before having these reforms, because without infrastructure you just go for liberalization, that can create problems. And also farmers want provision to go to court in contract farming because earlier in the law, the farmers law, it was not there. So that the government has agreed up later. So what should be done? My view has been that we should leave it to the states. The dual control of marketing, APMC by state government and trade area, non-APMC area by central government, it may not work. Is it necessary to have one size fits all policy? In fact, I have given interviews in Enadu and other places. My view that states are the better judges than the center regarding agriculture. There is a need for agriculture market reforms, but we have to leave it to the states in a cooperative federalism. And also you need infrastructure and institutions to help smallholders, strengthen infrastructure and collectives and cooperatives like Amul Milk for smallholders, for collective bargaining, including women collectives, etc. So also farmer producer organizations to help, because see what's happening is small and marginal farmers have 1 or 2 acres. They may have produced for few bags of, for example, vegetables or fruits or rice and all. So they can't have bargaining power. So FP was, at least on paper, they can help the small and marginal farmers. On MSP, the minimum support price, where I was fixing during 2008-10, it should be continued. but more incentives for other crops, which I was doing. I was increasing to pulses and other crops. Legalizing MSP may have some problems because there is a debate whether it is practicable. We can discuss in the discussion. And the regulatory infrastructure needed in the trade area, because without infrastructure, you can't have fair competition. Also, Punjab, Haryana, there is a need for cropping pattern shifts because there is soil degradation and groundwater depletion. So, but diversification has to be gradual, because when I used to go to Punjab, they say, what are the other crops we can grow? We continue to grow rice and wheat. But it's not sustainable. So we have to shift rice cultivation to Eastern India, where there is a plenty of water. So the diversification in other regions also needed for higher incomes of the farmers. Coming to other reforms in agriculture, there is a debate on subsidies and investments in agriculture. Subsidies are too high and investments are low, and also land issues, because tenancy, as you know, it's only oral in coastal Andhra as well as many other places, and also in Telangana region and other places. Land records also we need to automate, and technology and extension. This is an important one because there are now several technologies: biotechnology, digital, precision agriculture, AI, which you had recently lecture. So these are useful for agriculture also. For example, there is a debate on GM, genetically modified, the agriculture, which US, Canada, some of the countries, Brazil, they use more the genetically modified things. In India, mostly we use cotton. The BT cotton is used. And so technology can be very, it can increase the productivity and all. Precision farming, India is it is a very elementary stage now. So we can use GPS, remote sensing, drones and all with less inputs. But I'll briefly speak about institutional reforms, because institutions are important for agriculture, strengthening agriculture. Because rigid institutions like some of the government inefficient governance can create problems. So we need institutional reforms for input and output markets, and also land and water management, because water is scarce in 21st century. Water is the most important thing, even compared to oil and gas. Water is going to be the scarce commodity. And also to address climate change and natural farming. In fact, zero-based natural farming, you must have heard, Andhra Pradesh is the first state to adopt in a big way. Where I'm chairing, this institute, they're evaluating this natural farming. One important institution, of course, I mentioned earlier, farmer producer organization. There are several examples: alternative markets, even women collectives. Even we have self-help groups in some of the southern states. Earlier we had several institutions for water. The Pani Panchayats, the Anna Hazare started some of the watershed movements, Pani and for groundwater and the canal water, some rules, institutions. So we had to scale up some of these institutions to have more, water management and land management. Now I come to the last four, the slides. What are the goals of agriculture development? One is achieving 4% growth and raise productivity, because if you want to have, still in India, yields are low compared to China and other things. For example, we have 2 tons or 2.5 tons for rice. China has 6 tons. So, and also we need structural transformation within agri to rural run farm. Second goal is inclusiveness, in focus on small and marginal farmers, lagging regions, and also Eastern India one has to develop, and food and nutrition security needed. Last one, of course, you can't neglect now climate change, too much floods, droughts, and other things. So all three are interconnected. Now, coming to the concluding remarks, basically, we have to change the narrative of agriculture towards more diversified high-value production and better farm incomes, and also post-harvest, because we neglect post-harvest losses. Some estimates show 30 to 40% post-harvest losses. And wastage also is there. And as I mentioned, government policies are biased to rice and wheat. So there is a need to shift to other fruits and vegetables, livestock. Although recent farm laws were repealed, state should continue some of the reforms for higher growth and faster incomes and farm incomes. So, in fact, the recent economic survey, reorientation of agriculture, it talks about, it says, we had to take care of the challenges like climate change, rising input costs, landholding fragmentation, and less farm mechanization, low productivity, and disguised unemployment. Even RBI says that agriculture suffers from low capital formation and also R&D. R&D is important, low crop yields, and excessive dependence on subsidies and price support schemes. And last slide, finally, some economists say, the solution for agriculture lies in non-agriculture. Some economists argued that, because agriculture has low labor productivity and low absorption of labor in non-agriculture sector. So now we need more labor absorption in manufacturing and services. But however, agriculture is important because still we have 48% of the workers still work in agriculture, almost 60% dependent on agriculture. So from the employment and the dependence point of view, agriculture is important. So we need to raise the incomes of the farmers and others dependent on agriculture. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Mahendra Dev, for that very comprehensive and quick update. I especially liked the pros and cons of the 3 farm bills that you kind of elucidated. Just to kick off the discussion, how does the problem situation in India compare to a similar problem situation in the agriculture sector in other countries? For example, the growth rate, which you've said has been 3% and should go up to 4%, access to markets, the mandis, the lack of infrastructure, the supply chain. How do we compare to other countries? For example, I am told in the US, only 1% of the population is engaged in agriculture, which provides sufficient food to the entire country. Or China, which you say produces 6 tons versus 2 tons in India. Can you compare and contrast vis-a-vis other countries?
Yeah, particularly if we compare with Southeast Asian countries and also East Asian countries like China. So as you know, China and India, the per capita incomes in the 60s or early 70s was almost same. That China started reforms in agriculture in 1978. The individuals get incomes and all. Earlier it was all communes thing. So the reforms started. In fact, that's why they could reduce poverty and also increase yields. And later they concentrated on manufacturing. So whereas India started in a reverse way, the Mahalanobis model wanted to have, concentrate on big industry, a kind of neglect of agriculture in India in the 70s. And although we got a green revolution and those things, but in general, the investments. So basically 3-4 factors which distinguish between, Southeast Asia, East Asia and India. One is, investment in agriculture is less. in irrigation and those kind of things. Although we have long way from almost 10% irrigated area to now 51% irrigated area in India. But China is much more, and other countries like even Vietnam and other countries have much more spent on irrigation and other thing. So infrastructure is much better, and also R&D, research and development, they spent much more on the for example, India spends about 0.8% of agriculture GDP on R&D, whereas other countries spend on 2% or so on R&D. So these institutions also much better than India. So 3-4 factors are responsible, and of course China, the yields are high because they invested in all this R&D and other things, and infrastructure is much better. So as a result, their yields are high and farmers get much more income, and they reduce poverty much faster than India, and also incomes for the farmers. So these 3-4 factors are important of course ours is a democracy. China and other countries, they can implement faster than us, but that apart from that, we can learn lessons from them on how to improve much more in agriculture than before.
That's interesting. Before I bring up the question which was listed by one of the listeners, I was just wondering if the governmental policies themselves work at cross purposes, resulting in slow growth or declining growth of agriculture. For example, in the table that you showed, a large percentage comes from non-cultivation activities. They find it more remunerative to go and work as agricultural laborer, earn more than cultivating a 1-acre farm. Or there is so much infrastructure being built in India, physical infrastructure now, which is good. So there is more employment opportunity for them to go, migrate, leave their lands fallow or give it on tenancy. And they can make much more money in that activity. So are different government departments actually working in independent silos, not interconnected? And is that resulting in this making agriculture non-attractive? While we say that agriculture has to be improved, we also hear nobody stays in the villages any longer. It's very difficult to get agricultural labor. For example, in Andhra Pradesh, most of the agricultural labor, I understand, is imported from Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, or elsewhere. How do you, is there something to see here, a cross-purpose policy initiatives of the government?
Yeah, there is no cohesive policy in the government. I mean, for example, the agriculture department doesn't talk about the irrigation department or other departments. So they work in silos. So that is one reason why, for example, even the civil supplies, food and civil supplies ministry also doesn't work with the agriculture ministry. So these, coming together is an important one, as you mentioned. But what is happening, the agriculture for the up to, the middle farmer, a marginal, small and medium size farmers, they are not getting a remunerative income for a few acres, whereas large farmers, of course, can get away with, because they also have industry linkages and other things. But the problem with them is that some of them go to, for example, the marginal farmers, they go to this Mahatma Gandhi employment guarantee scheme, where you get, with little work, you get much higher wages probably. So that they think more remunerative. And then the Bihar and Uttar Pradesh farmers also, they don't have opportunities in agriculture, so they migrate to Bombay or Hyderabad or many other also even cultivation of Punjab agriculture or Telangana agriculture are here. So that's why the agriculture is not, income is not enough. So what's happening is that they are going to non-agriculture as either laborer or start a small shop. So as a self-employed kind of thing. So as a some supplementary income for that. So that's why, but on the other hand, there are some innovative farmers. I mean, young farmers are coming, and then this organic farming and others. I mean, at a very small scale. It's not a big scale. But organic farming, by the way, you can't overnight change the fertilizer chemical farming to organic farming, like Sri Lanka did. They, they got into problems. They wanted overnight, the organic farming without any fertilizer and all. So it has to be a gradual. For example, I mentioned Andhra Pradesh, some zero-based natural farming started. The institute I was talking about, they said yields are relatively higher. And then because they save on input costs, so the profits are higher. But they're doing in a small scale. For example, Prime Minister talks about Sikkim organic farming all the time. But it's not a big scale thing. So chemical, this fertilizer, pesticide thing may continue, but one has to reduce. And also climate change is coming. So one has to, cropping patterns have to be in tune with the, the rainfall situation and all thing. So it is not remunerative. And also government policies, as I mentioned, also, even I was responsible for, concentrating more on procurement of rice, wheat that time. And we are not doing many things for other crops.
Yeah. We have a question from Sanket. He was wondering, he heard that central government is has come up with a scheme to promote 10,000 FPOs that you mentioned, and throughout India, of course, and also a 1 lakh crore scheme. I think they announced recently for warehousing, food storage, the largest in the world, if I remember, I read. Now that these farm laws have been repealed, do you think this FPOs, bringing the small and marginal farmers into FPOs, can still be effective in the changed circumstances?
Yeah, actually, as I mentioned, small and marginal farmers particularly, they cannot go anywhere because non-agriculture, they can have some small shop and other things, but there is no, unless you improve skills and others, they cannot shift. So they have to organize themselves. So FPOs is one instrument for that. In fact, myself and Dr. Rangarajan wrote a paper on FPOs, how they're maybe beneficial. But the performance varies. Some of the FPOs on paper, in fact, many of them, because to get subsidies from the government. Right. So they get subsidies and forget about, farming, helping the farmers and all. On the other hand, some are doing very well. They're helping, like Maharashtra, as, myco, grape farmers and other fruit associations, they're doing quite well. So, but FPOs, in fact, for a size of India, you need 1 lakh FPOs. Still, we have about only 10,000 things. But if they're on paper and not doing work, so there should be some incentives for FPOs to work thing. So it's a performance varies thing, but the contribution of FPOs for yield increase and input, selection and bank loans and other things, they help some of them at least. Yeah.
That's interesting. We have a banker, as I introduced earlier, one Mr. Pradeep Kulkarni. So he agrees that pricing in the recent 3 farm bills one of the things addressed was to open up the market so that the farmer has a say in pricing of his product, because right now he is just confined to the mandi which is closest to him. He feels that's a good thing, but he also wants to know whether there are any other high impact reforms in the agricultural value chain that are needed or in the offing, to remove the inefficiencies in the system. And are there any initiatives the government is thinking of? And one example he gives is, for example, India has become the startup capital of the world. So are any of these startups also looking at agricultural sector?
Yeah, throughout the world, people are talking about the food systems. Food systems is basically from production to consumer, the value chains thing. In the food systems, consumer is also involved, whereas value chains from production, warehousing, storage, and agro processing and all. So, some of the countries I mentioned, they have, food and other non-food value chains, agriculture value chains are efficient. And so the difference between the price consumer gets and the farmer gets is lower in the other countries. Whereas in India, for example, tomatoes, you take the 100 rupees or now 150 somewhere, but farmer gets only 5 rupees or 10 rupees or something. Some may get 20-30 rupees. So the difference between a consumer price and the producer price is quite high, particularly for fruits and vegetables. Whereas in other countries, it's much lower, because if the price is 100 rupees in the consumer, they may get 80 rupees or something. But the AMUL model, where the farmer or the producer gets 80% of the consumer price. So that kind of value chains you need for other commodities also. Otherwise, for example, tomatoes, March, April, it was 2 rupees in some places, and people are just throwing because they don't get even labor costs. But suddenly now 100 rupees it is increased. But the middlemen may be getting much higher than the farmers. So, they get higher price. Some are getting 20, 30 and all, but not 100 rupees they get the thing. So you need to strengthen these value chains. And one of the reasons for the farm loss is to reduce this, this gap. And directly, as you mentioned, selling to the corporate or others, they get a higher price for that.
Mr. Prasad has brought up an interesting example to a question I posed at the very beginning about policy of different departments working at cross purposes. He has given a good example of Telangana, the Kaleshwaram project.
Yeah.
Now, there are, of course, it's been in the public domain for a long time that it is a economically unviable project because it costs about, I don't know, various figures. JP says it costs about 30,000 rupees to bring water for an acre of land in Telangana, whereas the income from that 1 acre, if he is producing rice, is only some 10,000 or something. So why aren't governments restricting or monitoring or moderating expenditure, which will further promote growth of paddy and wheat? Like you said, crop pattern has to change. But here we have a 1 lakh crore project, which is going to drive farmers to cultivate more rice, water intensive crops, so to say. Where does the gap lie?
Governments, they have the political economy reasons to have, they want to show that, they have built these projects and, help. Instead of that big projects some of the states, for example, Gujarat has done, of course, Narmada, but they have done a medium check dams kind of thing to storage, the water. And many places they have done the, minor and medium irrigation, rather than you need sometimes a big projects and all, but some of them, as you mentioned, they are not viable, in terms of cost and all. So instead of going for that, you need to have medium term irrigation. In fact, some of the studies when I was at CES, we did, whenever, the irrigation increases, they go for more rice crop cultivation. I mean, for example, otherwise they were having millets and other things. So I think it's more political economy kind of thing to, the having big projects and to show that we have done for the farmers. And so instead of that, with the same cost, we can have much more, irrigation for several farmers. In fact, Maharashtra also, sugarcane cultivation is not viable because it's only 15-20% irrigated, Maharashtra thing. So most of it goes to sugarcane and all. So some studies showed that same water you can use for multiple crops in Maharashtra for oil seeds, pulses, and other things. So, so that's why this preference for rice, wheat, sugarcane, which has 80% of the water, I think that is that has to be changed.
You just mentioned oil seeds. If I remember correctly, we still import 80% of our edible oil requirements in the country.
Yeah.
So why isn't any of these farm laws or any policy initiatives addressing or promoting, cultivation of oil seeds? Because we hear Nitin Gadkari every day talking about making farmers urjidata, so that they are no longer dependent on only agriculture. They can produce fuel additives, which will bring down our fuel import bill. So why can't we bring down our edible oil import bill if we can encourage? Is there any initiative of the government in the policy realm?
Yeah, in fact, the larger proportion is the palm oil. We import a lot from Malaysia and also partly from Indonesia and some other edible oils. But palm oil constitutes a lot of the share in these 80% thing. And also they give in PDS, public distribution system, this oil as one of the commodities. So the initiatives, in fact, when I was chairman of CSCP, I wanted palm oil also to come under MSP, minimum support price, to encourage thing, but it didn't work out that time. Government is thinking, but they also want to encourage palm oil cultivation much more in the thing, and others also, in the soybean and some other oils also, they're thinking more expansion. But I think palm oil is the most important thing, imports we do thing, and but our yields of oil seeds and also area has increased over time. So it's a it takes more time unless you shift rice, wheat. Because when I went to Punjab, they asked me, you want us to grow other crops, but I'm not getting remunerated price other crops compared to rice and wheat. In fact, they were angry with me that I was not increasing the wheat price. So I was given 2 security guards with guns, so that nobody shoots me.
I know.
So
there was some talk in the press about this farm laws actually were brought because the government wanted to give Adani's and Reliance a contract to build thousands of these silos, right? Metal silos for grain storage. Is there any truth in that?
I mean, it is true that without regulation and all, there can be cartels, and the since they're close to the government and they may do it, but I don't think the formulas they accepted. It will increase too much corporatization, as if everybody will come and invest in agriculture or something. But it is possible the crony capitalism may be there for in some of the cases like storage and other. But in general, it would benefit the reforms, benefit the farmers. As I mentioned, the Ashok Gulati study showed that Indian farmer is still net taxed because of these too many controls on agriculture.
Yeah,
But
Sudhakar, who's on the call, he is from a completely different field, of course. He was chairman of ECIL. But he brings up an interesting point. He says probably one of the reasons for this tardy growth in the agriculture sector, lack of adoption of new methods or technology or the benefits of R&D, is because of the last mile communication gap. What is people like you and institutions which are propagating cropping pattern or diversification or better seeds, or the communication does not reach the farmer who's actually tilling the land. So I'm sure this must have been one of the topics discussed in, I don't know what you call extension or outreach, it's called, I think, in agriculture. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, talking about extension activities, basically.
Okay.
What is happening in the labs, not going to the farmers.
Farmer.
So in fact, yield gap, we call it, between labs and the farmlands is still high in many states because of lack of extension thing. So if you use optimum inputs and other less inputs, for example, I've seen in my village, farmers go and if the need of pesticides is 2 times, they do spray it 4 times, 5 times, and fertilizer, if we need 3 times, then do it 6 times. So that kind of thing in even Punjab, Haryana, also a lot of use of this chemicals and all, and optimum use of. So their extension helps thing, which the other countries have much more extension than us. And earlier, when the Green Revolution was there, that time, extension systems were good, the government extension and all. But later, the extension government is not spending more money on these activities. But on the other hand, private investment also should come to agriculture because government alone cannot do it. Apart from the farmers, the others, private sector investment, like Dr. Harishchandra Prasad has done for the Andhra Pradesh and beyond on agro industries and other activities. I think those kind of things should be expanded.
Murli, did you raise your hand? Did you want to say something? I see it.
Yes, well, I have 2 questions. I had a question, but before that, this oilseed subject came up. I remember in the late 80s and early 90s, there was a very huge drive to be self-sufficient in oilseeds. And we really did achieve self-sufficiency in the year 94, if I remember right. Because we are also in a way connected to oilseeds because we depend on oil, even though it is non-edible. And then slowly, rapidly, it started going down quite rapidly, it appears. I don't know what the reason was. They shifted to other crops, but we did have a drive and we achieved the target. And then it went away rapidly. I don't know if you remember that era, a year when we were self-sufficient.
Yeah, it is true that I think after the reforms, 1991 reforms, I think oilseeds production has increased, area has increased. but still, our production is still high. Yields have increased. I mean, the hybrid varieties have come, and so the yields are higher. But what happened is that even the consumption is increasing, the consumption of edible oils. So that's why the supply demand match is there. So that's why we had to import much more now than before. But the self-sufficiency, I don't think completely we have achieved even that time. Still there is some gap, but the gap was widened now because of the increase in the consumption. Because when the incomes increase, the consumption of some of these commodities also increases, oil and other sugar and other things.
It's probably because of cheaper palm oil that was coming in as compared to the other oils that were being produced, probably because entire Malaysia and Indonesia, their economy is dependent on this palm oil exports, and they will go to any extent, to reduce the price in spite of the trade. So I think that probably could be the reason. The other question I had was on this perennial problem of farmer suicides. It's such a tragedy that the farmer works so hard, and at the end of the year, he doesn't get his remuneration, and he has to end his life. Is there any work going on that? And is there any light at the end of the tunnel for solving this terrible tragedy? I can say that.
Yeah, in fact, I wanted to mention that earlier. We have done in Bombay Institute, Indira Gandhi Institute of Development Research, which is RBI Institute, on Maharashtra suicides. We did the study. So basically, of course, there the problem of water is also there. People go for risky crops and all. And when I was in CES, we did Telangana suicide some study. So what's happening is that even throughout the world, one reason, apart from the agriculture-related reasons, they also spend a lot of money on health and education of children or other things. Because we interviewed one lady in Telangana. So she said she has taken for lease some 10 acres or something. And then she said 6 acres on cotton and some other things. Then we asked why you are going for risky crop like cotton. She said, I've taken a loan for my children's education, and also my husband was not well. We spent on this, so I have to pay back the debts. So indebtedness is the main one of the reasons. Also for agriculture loans and other things, they can't repay. And also this now climate change kind of things also. Suddenly heavy rain comes when the crop is there in the field, and that goes away, wash away things. So there is no other avenue except going for suicide. So that lady also said, if my cotton fails, I will go for suicide. And earlier also, the bore wells. In fact, one Mr. Reddy, small or medium farmer, he tried 20 times in his 2-acre land, the bore well, and it failed. And he has indebtedness. He borrowed some 5 lakhs to 10 lakhs for that purpose. So he committed suicide. The thing. So there are several reasons. I mean, trying to get water and going for risky crops, and also agriculture loans and health, other expenditures, because farmers also have to spend on non-agriculture aspects like health and other things. So it's all a kind of overall factors that lead, which is very unfortunate. And it's happening more to medium farmers, because agriculture laborers and others, they go for work or this Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Program or some other PDS and other things. but some of them having 3-4 acres and all, they get loans from money lenders and they can't repay. So it happened in Maharashtra, Telangana, and some of the other states, particularly where dryland areas are much more, because you don't see suicides in Bihar or where water is plenty.
So there's another question relating to access to credit by tenant farmers. I think this is especially relevant to Telangana. The government has implemented something called Dharani portal, which I understand, I'm not very sure, but I read in the news, it does not recognize the tenant. It only lists who is the owner. And so much so that the 10,000 rupees dole which is being given out every year for per acre is being given to the owner listed, though he is not cultivating. I believe there is a initiative called OCEN, OCEN. Is it something like ONDC, the Open Credit? Sanket, can you unmute yourself and explain what OCEN is by Government of India? Sanket? He's written it as OCEN.
Okay.
Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not. Heard.
Okay, Sanket, you can just type it in if your mic is not working.
He's on mute, I think.
No, he tried, but we couldn't hear him. He's typing it. So access to institutional credit, Open Credit Enablement Network, I understand.
Okay.
OCEN.
It's true that because tenancy is a oral thing, it's not a written contract in many places. So they are not included in the thing. But in states like Orissa has some other similar program like Telangana. They included tenants in the thing, even if it is oral or something. So some innovations can be done. That it is true that tenants don't get access to credit and other access to inputs and other things because of it's a oral kind of thing.
If you permit, then I'll ask one last question and then we can end it. This is regarding livestock. So Prasad brought up an interesting similar situation relating to livestock, as you said about crop and productivity. He says compared to some of the other nations, our yield per milk yield is very low, and hence probably it is impairing our export ability of milk. I think though we are one of the largest, if not the largest milk producer in the world, second or third, I'm not sure.
Yeah, second, I think.
Second, I think. So I wanted to add a corollary to his observation while you answer that. His questions brought to my mind an example in Telangana. There is a scheme to give 20 sheep for each farmer, and with the hope that the sheep population will grow. And I understand the government claims the sheep population has grown so much that we will be the meat exporter for the country. But if you see the market situation, the price of meat has gone up. I think it's almost doubled since the scheme was started in Hyderabad, at least. The second related thing is the environmental ecological part. With so many lakhs of sheep, what happens to the grazing grounds and how does that impact environment? I mean, the natural balance seems to have been tilted here, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is true that the milk actually we are number one largest.
Oh, okay.
So we have done better than other crops in milk because of this cooperative, Amul and other kind of models, which the producer at least gets higher price. But that is true, as Mr. Prasad mentioned, that the yields are still lower compared to many other countries. So, I mean, governments are trying to help the livestock people, they how increase the yields and all, but much more has to be done. But the thing is that about the grazing and thing, it is too ecologically it's bad. But if you see actually meat consumption, in fact, developed countries now they're saying because of this carbon emissions, they're saying we have to reduce meat in thing. But if you compare their per capita consumption and our per capita consumption, for example, US, Europe, they consume 65 kilos per annum or something per person, whereas we consume 6 kilos India. So we are still, we can still have the meat consumption and all, but how do you, the graze those sheep and other things that, whether it leads to ecological imbalance. So we have to see those things. But in terms of meat eating and carbon emissions, we are, much better than the developed countries, where now they are talking stop meat consumption, have vegetarian food and other things. Although the proportion is very low there in Europe as well as US.
So we'll end with one question from Mrs. Uma Seshadri. She wanted to know if this interlinking of the rivers, does that project have an impact on the agricultural sector? If so, where is that currently?
Yeah, interlinking, it was a good idea, but among agriculture economists, a lot of debate was there that time. Some people said, yeah, similar to the Kaleshwaram kind of thing. They said that it's too expensive to link, and a lot of, we have to demolish also tribals and other people will be, they will get affected. So instead of that, have, as I was telling, that have smaller projects, the medium level within, rather than linking the rivers together, which is very expensive. Although it's a good idea, to have interlinked kind of thing, but in practice they said it's very expensive, and also a lot of displacement of people and their lands and other things.
Thank you. I think it's 8:03 and we started punctually at 6:30. Let's end it. Thank you so much, Professor Mahendra. Very interesting discussion. And thank you for patiently answering multiple questions. May I call upon our Joint Secretary, Mr. Somsekhar Garu, to propose the vote of thanks.
President of FOSWL, Hyderabad, Sri Venkateswara Garu, distinguished speaker, Professor S. Mahendra Dev, FOSWLians and invitees. Thank you all for joining our 175th monthly meeting. We thank the family members of Sri Mullapudi Harichandra Prasad Garu for sponsoring the endowment lecture in the month of July every year. The logistics sponsorship for the month of July every year is open, now available. If you are interested in extending support, please do contact us. Thank you for reading the prayer. That is myself. We also thank Professor.
You're not audible, Somsekhar.
Prabhu Pingali and Dr. Ashok Gulati for introducing Professor S. Probably the linkage is.
Yeah, it's okay.
Limited.
Now we can hear you.
The turmoil in the country in the recent past, with the farmers protesting against the 3 farm bills as a part of agriculture reforms, is still fresh in our minds. Whatever be the political aspects associated with these farm bills, today of agriculture in India, the continuing travails of the farmer, and why and what policy interventions are needed and urgently. We probably could not have found a better person to talk to us and educate us on this aspect than Professor Mahendra. His enviable credentials related to the agriculture sector in India probably enabled him to get a ringside view of agriculture in India for the past few decades. And very objective. Thank you for joining us this evening, Professor S. Mahendra, for an excellent talk and presentation. Our forthcoming meetings and eminent speakers are 19th August, Dr. Aishwarya Rajiv, a young assistant professor, writer, and practicing dentist, will speak to us on dental care in the elderly. 16th September, Mr. Nanda Kishore Reddy will speak to us on JUL and wildlife sanctuaries. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. Till we meet on 3rd Saturday, 19th August, for next 176th FOSWL meeting. You can open your mobile phone.
I think Mr. Somsekara's internet was choppy,
Thank you.
not very clear, but the next two meetings, next month will be
Gently.
on dental care in the elderly, a young dentist. And subsequent month, September is a very interesting subject. He is a biotechnologist who quit his job and set up a petting zoo in Hyderabad, and he is a consultant to the government of Madhya Pradesh for building an aviary in their zoo. So he's going to talk to us about zoos, wildlife sanctuaries, aviaries. So very different topic from, we had one recently about Indian birds, if you remember, about two or 3 months ago. And after that, we'll have a young doctor from New York City. She's a pediatric emergency medicine specialist, and she has worked on, she has volunteered in this organization called Doctors Without Borders. So they go and provide healthcare in underdeveloped countries. She's the daughter of a classmate of ours, and she's going to speak to us probably in November. So those are the interesting talks that are coming up. So stay tuned. And remember, 3rd Saturday, evening 6:15 always. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Professor Mahendra. And it was a very scintillating talk. Look forward to seeing you all again. Bye-bye. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.